my name is Lyle Murphy, the founder of the Alternative to Med Center, where we help people transition from psychotropic and psychiatric medication over to more natural alternatives. And we've been doing this for 17 years. Today's topic is the long-term effects of Zoloft. The first question we have is, can Zoloft cause permanent damage? There was a study published in Sky News saying that long-term antidepressant users are risking permanent damage to their bodies, according to medical experts like Dr. Tony Kendrick, who is a professor of primary care at the University of Southampton. He says that more urgent action needs to be taken to encourage and support long-term users to help get off of this medication. Next question, how many years can you stay on Zoloft? Well, that depends on who you ask. If you ask the drug manufacturers, they'll tell you to be a consumer for life. However, in a more conventional sense, the prescribers that are more conventional hopefully are echoing that this medication for a major depressive event is probably something that should be taken for 6 to 9 months and maybe up to 2 years if you're having multiple depressive episodes during that time. However, we believe that, and the World Health Organization has actually supported this, that if you have to use a medication to thwart an emergent crisis during a time where you can't change your diet, you can't change your marriage, you've suffered a grievous loss that you just can't confront and it's taking you under and you need to use the medication to try to get over that, well then hopefully you can use the stability of that moment to then look for the holistic alternatives very early. Maybe the medication pulled you out of something, but the problem with medications like this is you don't get something for nothing. Anyone that is taking ecstasy, let's say, probably knows that after you have the high, you don't feel so great the next day or next week because you're spending all of that stuff. Same way with these medications. You're not making serotonin by using Zoloft. You're spending it. And when it's all spent, guess what? The whole backbite of being at best in your original spot, but more likely being in a place where now you're really stuck because you can't get off the medication. The medication is not doing any good and you're not able to, you don't even have any serotonin left to reuptake in the first place. So I would encourage people to look for ways that they can change their diet, get a counselor, start exercising, things that are going to support their physiology real early in their process so they don't have to stay on these medications for life. Next question, can you stay on Zoloft long term? Again, people can, and I have a bit of a limited window in which, over the last 17 years, I don't get people calling me to say, hey, my medication's been working great for 20 years. People are generally calling us because their medication experience has been a complete catastrophe. So that's the lens that I have. But on a physiological level, again, what is happening is this is a synapse, right? And you've got the vesicles on this side that are holding serotonin. They open up, the serotonin is released, it exerts an influence on these receptors over here, and then it's reuptaken so it can be used again. So it's like a game of catch. I throw you the ball, you throw it back to me, I hold the ball till I can throw it again. Well, if I just keep throwing balls out there, and then none of them are coming back, eventually I don't have any more balls to throw. And what happens to the serotonin at that point is it's stuck out there, it's sort of abandoned in no man's land, and it degrades into its metabolites, and it's no longer serotonin. There's no serotonin left in the nervous system or the vesicles to use to create an inhibitory influence. So there's really nothing left to reuptake. So that's what happens with the long-term use of Zoloft. Now, does Zoloft change your personality? Absolutely. Alcohol changes your personality. Drugs change your personality. Anything that's affecting your neurophysiology is going to change your personality. Now, is it going to turn you into somebody who is a faithful husband or wife that goes to church every Sunday and is very good to your children? It is suddenly like you're beating your children and you're cheating on your wife or husband and you became an evil person? No, it's not going to change the core of who you are, but it might change how that expresses itself in your day-to-day life. So for instance, if the drug is making you more anxious, then you may be more short-tempered with people. And people aren't used to that. And they're like, why, something's changed about you. That may make you where you're less anxious and people just maybe are more at ease around you. So anything that's changing your neurochemistry is going to that degree, change your personality. Will I gain weight on Zoloft? Zoloft isn't the top SSRI that is associated with weight gain. Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro. At one time, they thought that Zoloft was a pure SSRI, but really it does have a bit of a dopamine effect. But in about 25% of the people, there is a approximately 10-pound weight increase by taking Zoloft. So it can put some weight on you. Does Zoloft cause hair loss? Yes, don't know exactly why, but Zoloft is associated with hair loss. Next question, can I drink alcohol while taking Zoloft? Well, the FDA recommends against it. I recommend against it too. You've got one sedative alcohol and you're combining it with another sedative Zoloft. Not a really good idea. But, if you're drinking like one glass of wine with friends, can you tolerate that? Maybe. Maybe make it a half a glass of wine. If it's that infrequent, then you're probably not going to have a problem. If you're pounding copious amounts of alcohol and you're taking Zoloft at the same time, you probably got bigger problems than just what the combination of those two will do, but it's definitely not a good idea to be doing that. And I would challenge people who are drinking a lot, have been drinking a lot, before they even started taking antidepressants, that might be the reason why you're serotonin deficient in the first place. Sugar and alcohol have an effect on your insulin, which definitely affects your ability to convert tryptophan into serotonin. It converts it really fast for a couple hours into serotonin, but then there's a rebound effect that happens after that, and you go on a bit of a roller coaster ride. Maybe that drinking is the reason why you're having mood disturbances that are leading you into needing antidepressant in the first place, and maybe rather than upping your medication or staying on medication long term, you should look at trying to cut the alcohol out of your life. Next question, does Zoloft permanently change the brain? If you look at we have a bit more savvy tools here at Alternative Med Center to pull people out of withdrawal and have them feeling better during a medication reduction and elimination. But if you look at the people that don't have that type of support, the stories of people suffering for years and going into protracted withdrawal and having brain zaps and having unrelenting anxiety and all of the withdrawal symptoms that go on for much longer than you would consider acute withdrawal or even a moderate post-acute withdrawal time frame, this lends credence to the belief that there is long-term brain changes that are happening that take a while or that might be not permanent but semi-permanent occurring in the brain. Next question, what does Zoloft do to the brain? Okay, so I'm sure you've all watched the commercials. Zoloft blocks the reuptake of serotonin. That for a while leaves the chemical more available for your nervous system to have an inhibitory effect. So where you're dampening these impulsive, I want to kill myself, I want to kill others, fight or flight ruminations, it softens that, right? But then, again, what happens when the serotonin is gone? Also, when you're needing that kind of stimulation in your life for some reason, you're driving a car and you need to be attentive, or your head needs to be level to the horizon or something, your body's trying to push through these impulses so that you can actually survive. So what does the body do? It softens the amount of receptivity. It downregulates, is what it's called, to serotonin. So you get this neuroadaptation that happens so that, that drug isn't doing as much, or the serotonin naturally isn't doing as much. So those are the neurochemical changes that are probably happening on a molecular level that can have a lasting effect. Next question, does Zoloft cause dementia? Yes, there was analysis of 5 different studies called a meta-analysis that evaluated the risk between SSRIs and the development of dementia. And especially in the older population, it was associated with a substantial increase, 1.5 times, when compared with people who are not using antidepressants, as far as tailing them into dementia. Next question, does Zoloft affect memory? You can have memory impairments just from depression itself. And in some studies, they showed that the memory loss that depressed patients were happening was probably more associated with the SSRIs like Zoloft rather than the depression itself. And anything really that is blocking stimulation in the brain, blocking and having a countering effect on norepinephrine or acetylcholine, which are associated with learning and memory, when you're buffering that, of course, you're going to start having memory problems. And those can make it where you're just not retaining as well. Next question, can Zoloft cause manic behavior? It's more common than the other SSRIs because it does have a slight dopaminergic effect, but not typically. It's not a medication that's often causing manic behavior, but if you're taking Zoloft and you're not drinking a lot of coffee and you're not smoking pot and you're not doing other harsh stimulants and suddenly you find yourself manic, it's probably the Zoloft. Next question, does Zoloft help with anger? Typically an SSRI, for the duration of time that there's still serotonin left to reuptake, is going to diminish your anger. So you may have, the antidepressants really, serotonin is not an antidepressant neurochemical. Dopamine and things that are associated with reward are more like, hey, I feel good. Serotonin is what keeps you from acting on an impulse. If I have an impulse to kill myself or kill somebody else or take my car and smash it into the guy that's yelling at me, then that happens, to all of us, right? Sometimes we have the but there's a neurochemical diplomacy that happens that kind of regulates what's happening in the more primitive part of our brain that says, oop, that's not a good idea. You'll go to jail. Your family's going to be whatever. That has the ability to exert a anti-impulsivity effect. When you're deficient in serotonin, you may go into those rage states and may not even remember that it happened because that part of your brain that's operating doesn't have the greatest memory as far as conscious memory, and you don't even know what happened. Most people that have actually murdered somebody in a rage, that did it, wasn't premeditated, that wasn't even who they are. They just flashed and then something happened and suddenly, they're like, oh my God, what happened here? The purpose of developing the original antidepressants the original serotonin antidepressants was to help people gain a distance between them and that impulsive thoughts and acting on those impulses. So SSRIs and Zoloft is in that class could actually, for a time being, help a person and distance them from their anger. Next question, does Zoloft help with intermittent explosive disorder? Boy, that's a bit of a mouthful. Basically, does it keep you from having flash anger? Well, again, an SSRI is going to have that effect. Zoloft is one of those medications that does seem to be beneficial for intermittent explosive disorder, but Prozac is actually more studied for alleviating that disorder more than others. And again, I think the effect on those is temporary, that if you have to use a drug, there's other ways to support your neurochemistry that you can learn about on our website. You can look up Zoloft alternatives or antidepressant alternatives on the website and get a lot of information on what you can do nutraceutically and holistically. Now, if you're thinking about changing your medication based upon what you saw in this video, please don't do that alone. We are not medical guides for you in that way. Unless you become a patient at Alternative to Med Center, please consult some expert help before you start changing medications and or adding supplements. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great evening or night and be well. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.